There's a feeling a lot of us have right now. It's this quiet, nagging sense that holding cash, the one thing that's supposed to be the very definition of safety, somehow feels risky. In this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly why that is.
For generations, cash was simple. It was the foundation of security. You know that crisp bill in your wallet, the steady number in your savings account? It was seen as the ultimate safe harbor, the place you run to when things get chaotic. And think about it. Unlike the stock market, with its crazy ups and downs and scary headlines, cash was just quiet. The amount in your account today was the same amount tomorrow. It gave you a sense of certainty, a kind of peace that was incredibly valuable. So, if that's how it used to be, what happened? Why does it feel so different now? Well, that feeling of unease you might have about your savings, it isn't just you. Something about our relationship with money has fundamentally changed. Let's dig into what that is. To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to walk through a few key ideas. We'll start with what cash used to symbolize, then look at how the rules of money literally changed. We'll dive into the psychology of a loss you can't see, compare a sudden crash to a slow decay, and explore why trust is the foundation of it all. And finally, we'll try to define this new kind of risk we're all feeling.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What did a safe asset even mean for most of history? For, well, almost all of history, the value of money was tied to something real, something you could touch. Whether it was the actual gold or silver in a coin or a piece of paper that you could trade in for a specific amount of gold, its value didn't just come from a promise. The main risks were physical things, like someone stealing it or a bank failing. The risk wasn't that the money itself was designed to lose its power over time. Safety was rooted in physical scarcity. But that foundation, that idea of physical scarcity, it was taken away, piece by piece. This is where we get into the moments that completely rewrote the rules of money.
Really, three major events created the world we live in now. First, and this is the big one, in 1971, the U.S. completely cut the dollar's tie to gold. From that moment on, money was no longer backed by a commodity. Its value came from government declaration, or fiat. Then, in the 90s, central banks all over the world started openly aiming for inflation. And finally, the 2008 financial crisis brought on a whole new wave of extreme monetary policies.
And this number, 2%, represents a massive change in how we think about money. A 2% inflation target became the goal for central banks. It's basically an official public policy of slowly devaluing the currency. Now, the goal is to keep the economy moving and avoid deflation. But for the person holding cash, it means one thing. Your money is designed to lose value. It's a guaranteed loss by design. Then came 2008. When interest rates hit zero and it still wasn't enough, central banks rolled out these new tools, like quantitative easing, or QE. Put simply, this is when they create new money to buy financial assets, flooding the system with liquidity. The goal was to prop up the markets, but it sent a very clear message. If you're just holding cash, which earns you nothing, you're falling behind. It essentially became a penalized position. So if cash is actively designed to lose value over time, why doesn't it feel like we're losing money every single day? Well, the answer isn't really in economics, it's in our own psychology. It comes down to this really powerful cognitive bias called money illusion. This is our natural tendency to just see the number on the bill, the face value, instead of what that bill can actually buy. We see the number, not its power. So, getting a 5% raise feels amazing, right? But if inflation is running at 7%, you've actually lost purchasing power. And this is exactly where that illusion kicks in. You look at your savings account, and the number is just stable. It doesn't flash red and green all day. And because that number doesn't change, our brain automatically codes it as safe, even while its real power to buy things is quietly slipping away. Let's actually make this invisible loss visible for a second. If we assume that standard 2% inflation target, $100 today will only be able to buy what about $82 buys in 10 years. Wait 20 years, and it's down to just $67. The loss is absolutely real, but because it happens bit by bit, day by day, we just don't notice it until the damage is already done. And this isn't some personal failure. It's actually a feature of how our brains evolved. We are hardwired for survival, to react to the sudden, obvious threat, the predator in the bushes, or the stock market plunging 20% in a day. We are not built to detect a danger that just creeps up on us slowly and silently over decades. A slow decay just doesn't set off our internal alarm bells. And this brings us to a really important comparison. This paradox in how we think about risk, the loud, visible crash versus the quiet, invisible decay. Getting this difference is the key to understanding our own financial gut feelings. It all comes down to what's visible. Market risk, like with stocks, is right there in your face. You see the value of your portfolio go up and down every day. It's on the news. It triggers a very real, immediate feeling of fear. But cash risk? It's totally invisible. The number in your bank account is the same. You only notice the loss much later when you realize your cart full of groceries costs way more than it used to. It's not panic. It's a slow dawning dread.
And on top of that, we have another bias called loss aversion. Psychologists have found that the pain of losing something feels about twice as bad as the pleasure of gaining the same amount. So when you see your portfolio drop 10% in a week, that pain is intense. But a slow, invisible 10% loss in your cash's buying power over a few years, it just doesn't register as a loss in the same way. So it doesn't trigger that same powerful emotional reaction, even if the financial hit is identical. Okay, let's pull the lens back for a moment and look at the even bigger picture here, because everything we've talked about really rests on one single thing.
Since 1971, our money has had no real intrinsic value. It's not backed by anything physical. The only reason it works is because we all believe it works. It's a collective belief system. You accept a dollar for your work because you trust that someone else will accept that dollar from you for something you need. The entire global financial system is built on this foundation of trust. Now, this trust isn't just random. It's built on some really important pillars. We need to believe our institutions are credible. We need to believe the central bank can make decisions without political interference. We need to believe there's a real commitment to keeping prices stable. When we feel like these things are solid, we feel confident in our money. But what happens when those pillars start to look shaky? When people start to think that politicians are influencing the central bank, or that the government is just printing money to cover its spending? The whole system starts to feel less fair. High and unpredictable inflation is a symptom of that trust breaking down. And that feeling that cash is risky? That's a completely rational human response to seeing the very foundations of the system start to wobble. So, how do we put all of this together? This anxiety you might be feeling around holding cash isn't just appearing out of thin air. It's a direct response to a very real change in the world. And this is probably the most important thing to take away from all of this. That feeling that cash is riskier than it used to be is not an irrational thought. It's actually a correct perception of our modern monetary system. It's a rational response to a world where money is no longer a physically backed asset, but a system with slow, steady devaluation built right into its DNA. Now, it's really important for us to say that this explainer is for your education and understanding only. This is not financial advice. Our only goal here is to help replace some of that confusion with a bit of clarity. So let's end with this thought. The anxiety you might feel about cash isn't a sign that there's something wrong with your thinking. It might actually be a sign that you're becoming more aware. It's that moment when you start to see the real value of your money, not just its face value. The moment the invisible decay finally becomes visible to you. And understanding how it all works is really the first step to navigating this world with a little more clarity. Thanks for watching.